Okay, so welcome everyone to our new community meetings for June 2023. It's been this month. I think we shipped OpenFGA. We made it open source mid-June last year, so we are kind of I think it was June 20th. Okay, so we're close to our first birthday. So happy birthday to us! I didn't know that. I just realized when I saw June there. Okay, so introduction. The agenda is usually the same. We start with a few introductions. So I think this meeting is, most of us were here the last time or the previous meeting, so that's great to see. But there's a few new people. So this is the team. We have a new engineer in the team, which is Jose. So welcome, Jose, to the team. And hopefully we'll have more pictures in the next meetings, and we are growing the team. But yeah, this is the team, and this is where we are based on. Those small flags there. So, and the last time I think we did a round of introductions. If someone is new to the community and wants to introduce themselves, that will be great. And if anyone wants to repeat where they're working from, what they're doing, that's also welcome, right? But yeah, I don't want everyone to just do the same things they did last time, but maybe just say the company you're working for. I think that can help. And if you want to have any comments about your OpenFGA involvement and stage of production, that would be awesome. So whoever want to start.
I guess I'll start because I'm vocal, whatever. I'm Carlos. I was here last time. I've been interested in OpenFGA for a while, probably from inception, but haven't actually been able to play with it. As far as adoption, I work at New Relic. As far as adoption goes, we are still in our ideation phase and will likely start prototyping it in the next couple of months.
Awesome. Thanks, Carlos.
Yeah.
I can go next. I'm Chris Kingdon, working for Beeline. I got interested in OpenFGA during, I think it was Octane last year when it was announced. I've mostly been just doing some POC type work in it, but it's definitely something we're interested in.
Okay, you were breaking up a little for me, but I think we got the gist of what you mentioned, so thank you.
I suppose I can go next. So Alex from Canonical, we're using OpenFGA for our work here, so just following developments.
Thank you, Alice.
Hey, I'm Andrew from Read AI. We're a startup in Seattle, and we're using OpenFGA in production for document sharing and data authorization. And since last month, we've rolled out a couple new versions of authorization models, which was a first for us. So kind of going through that process, and yeah, things are going pretty well.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Okay, good. So thanks. I think the rest of you will hear the next time, or the previous times that we're kind of know each other for a while. So I'm gonna move forward. So things we shipped in the last time. So we added in a few new methods in our SDKs that can be helpful in scenarios. One is, I just click the links. This is we did that for all the SDKs. The last time we were missing a few. One of the methods is list relations. This one basically is going to call check for each relation for a specific user and an object. So you can specify a list of relations, and we're going to call check. We're going to do that in batch using our bat check implementation, which is another endpoint we added. And so this one is you set up a list of checks and we run them in parallel. So this is usually faster than run them one by one. And we can give you an easy way to do that in parallel. This still happens from the client. So it's not that we send the batch request to the server. but given you're currently reusing HTTP connections, this is kind of pretty fast to do. And then we also added a way for you, in general, when you call write, you send a set of tuples and we write them all together in the same transaction, okay? And you need to wait until all of those things are saved to get a response. And we also added an option now in write that we do it non-transactional, so we can do a lot of requests in parallel and they are saved together, right? So we also called this in batch and using multiple HTTP requests at the same time. So this can help if you want to do a lot of writes and you don't require transactional semantics between all of those, right? So those are SDK changes, and then we shipped a new release candidate of a new OpenFGA version with experimental support with list objects for some specific scenarios that we are going to demo later today in the meeting. So when we implemented list objects, we first did a very inefficient implementation, and later we improved the implementation and was much faster for a lot of use cases, but we wasn't missing one, which is the one we are working on. We got contributed a homebrew formula, so you can just do brew install OpenFGA without anything else, and you get OpenFGA installs. And we have a lot of works contribute to the Helm charts, so thanks to Pedro, which is not here, but thank you very much anyway. And the other thing we did is we are integrated with an OpenSSF Scorecard, which is a tool that monitors and evaluates the security posture of the OpenFGA repository. We got very good numbers. So from the more than 1 million repositories that this tool scans, only these have 9 or more in points, right? So we are kind of one of the, I don't know, best repos in the world, from a security standpoint, as measured as by this tool, which of course is just one measure. This is kind of, this scorecard they keep adding more things and they keep improving it, and so we need to tweak it and add more things as they improve. And also there are some things, for example, signed release, that as we release the new, I think the latest 3 versions are being signed, so the new versions are going to be signed. So when you get to 5, you get 10 points. So there are some of these things that are going to move high as we ship more product and evolve with the organization. So also nice thing to show. And then so we presented about OpenFGA, which is the same product as OpenFGA in Dev Day. So one of the team members did that. So thank you, Adrian. He's there in the meeting room. And there's a YouTube channel that I link there. When we have also these meetings, or the recording of this meeting is there, and that recording is also there. So you probably don't need it, but maybe if you have a coworker that needs to understand how FGA works, it's a good introduction video. So you can share that internally and get more people to understand how the product works. We're going to be attending KubeCon in November, and we are working on some of you in presenting, in submitting proposals to the conference. If any of you is interested, the deadline for presenting is next Friday, so the Friday next week. So if anyone's interested in presenting with us, we can do that, right? Those kind of presentations with a vendor and an end user usually go well, and sometimes they have higher chances to get accepted. So let me know if you're interested. We can prepare something by the end of next week. Okay, now and next. If you go to the GitHub roadmap we have there in GitHub, these are the things we are listing. So we are currently working in the list object optimization, which is where we ship in the release candidate, and also the CLI. And we'll be working on the things that are in the next column. We're going to share some details about these things now. So first, we are building a CLI. We didn't have a CLI, which was kind of pretty embarrassing. Now we are doing that. The first iteration of the CLI is going to have just the basic API wrappers. So the core API wrapped in the CLI. We have that almost done. So now Ragit is going to share his screen and show us how that works. That's my understanding, at least. So hopefully he can make that happen.
Andres, before you go, that slide that you had for the video to share with others.
Yes.
I went to the YouTube page and there's no.
Yeah, you look at let me go there. So it's in the in the playlist. This one, the one here.
Okay, got it. Someone put the link in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, no problem. Rag, can you present or not? I cannot hear you.
Oh, okay. Can you see my screen now? I should be sharing.
No.
I'll come back to this with setting up. Andres, maybe you can continue while we figure out technical sharing stuff.
Sounds great. The so Ryan was going to demo this. This would be probably kind of pretty what you would expect from a CLI, right? Wrapping the core APIs. We are doing a couple of new iterations after this that will come soon after. One is today we have the model and we have the JSON representation of that, right? And when you call our APIs, you need to use the JSON representation, and you can transform it with both using the syntax transformer, but it's kind of cumbersome. So what we're doing now is we're going to have the CLI is going to have first-class support for the DSL format of the language. So you will be able to say, I want to create a model with this .FGA, which would be the model, right? I want to write this model. I want to get the model in the DSL format. Okay, so working in general with the DSL format, you wouldn't need to use the JSON for anything if you are using the DSL. Okay, so this will be practical for a few use cases, and you can now keep the OpenFGA, the FGA model in GitHub, and immediately and very easily save some model if you want as part of CI/CD without any intermediate steps, right? So this will be.
Andres.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just make sure to go back to sharing. You're not sharing anything right now.
Thank you. So thank you. The next time, the last time this happened to me, and they didn't tell me until the meeting ended. Andres, you weren't sharing last part of the meeting. So anyway, thanks, John. So yeah, this will be the way it will work. So you can create a model with specifying the model itself, write it, get it, and transform it. The next thing we're going to build is we're going to add some support for testing and validating models. So the one possible way of doing that will be you have a single YAML file that has at the top the model, and then you can specify different tests with a set of tuples that will be used for the tests and certain assertions that you want to do for checks and for list objects, right? So this way, the idea is that you can run this without even having a server. So the goal we have is we're going to embed a lightweight version of the OpenFGA in the CLI, so you can prototype with a model and tabs, whatever, just by using that without deploying anything. So we think that's going to be very useful when prototyping and playing with the product. And you can use that instead of the playground, right? And use the product and play with it. This is one way that you have a single YAML with the model and the tests. Another similar syntax would be you have the model in a different file, and then you run the tests, right? So that will let you have the model a separate file, and you can manage that in CI/CD and post it to your service whenever you deploy, but also run the tests, okay, independently. And then the other one is you can only have the tests and point them to an existing store ID, and this would call the server and run the checks and the list object on that server. Okay, so different ways to run this. Any comments or questions about this approach? You like it? Good. And are you ready for the CLI thing?
Yes.
Ragged? Okay, perfect. Let's go there.
Okay. So what we're just going to demo quickly the expenses. So you can see it here in the playground, but we'll demo it on our local OpenFGA server.
So actually, yeah. First of all, like it comes with generic support for almost everything. So if you want to list stores, there's nothing because we just started the server. Let's go create a store. You can see a store being created. So let's create another store. So now we should have 2 stores. You can see them here. They're in JSON. And you can see all the requests in the OpenFGA server happening here. So everything else is just generic. So yeah, we can get the store. We can even delete the store. So if we do list now, we have 1 less store. Yay.
Magic.
Okay. So, okay, we're creating a new store just to start with. Now, does it have any models, authorization models in it? No. Sorry, can you all see the?
Yeah.
Good, okay. And so let's go and create a model. This is the same expenses model, so we just copied it from the playground. So we can see here, there's an authorization model ID. If we list, this is what you just sent back. We can just choose, like right now we have only 1 model, but we can just choose which model to get. And here, yeah, we're getting it. Now let's do some more fun stuff. Let's do some writes. So in this case, we have 3 employees. So Anne manages Beth, Beth manages Carl, and Carl has just submitted an expense report. So we're just gonna write, we wrote 3 tuples. So you can see here, tuples right, Anne manages Beth, Beth manages Carl, Carl submits a report for a tool 1, license for tool 1. So according to our model, this means both Anne and Beth should be able to approve it. The reason is Beth is Carl's manager, and Anne manages Beth, therefore is also Carl's manager, or at least can approve that report. So let's run these 3 checks. So yes, Anne can approve. In this case, Beth can approve, and just for completeness sake, let's just make sure Carl cannot approve. So yeah, you can see allowed false. List objects works. So we want to see who are all the employees that Anne can manage. And you can see Anne can manage both Beth and Carl. Now let's go and delete this. Let's say Anne can no longer manage Beth, is no longer Beth's manager. So let's delete this. If we try to see now what are the objects, like list objects on whoever can Anne can manage, and we'll see none. So by deleting the tuple, Anne lost access to managing both Beth and Carl. And now if we check, can Anne approve this? No longer, no, because well, the tuple has been deleted. We also have list relations implemented. So okay, what are all the relations that Carl has on this report? In this case, he only has submitter, which makes sense. This was a sample authorization model with very little what's it called? Relations. Also rechanges. So if for some reason you want to see all changes, you can. So this just tells you all the tuple operations, all the reads, all the writes, all the writes, all the deletes that have been happening. You can also read. So if you want to check what tuples exist, in this case, we're checking, okay, show me the tuples that show Carl is a submitter of this report. You'll somewhere I made a mistake. This should, I think, show 1 tuple. But just for also, you can just change URL. So this by default, it targets like localhost 8080, which is OpenFGA's default port. But assuming like maybe you want to choose to run OpenFGA somewhere else, maybe, or if you want to target, for example, our playground or like the Auth0FGA playground or Auth0FGA dashboard, you can also provide a server URL, and it also allows you to do like client credentials, API tokens. If you set up OpenFGA to accept API tokens, you can still do that. So in this case, we're targeting the expenses store. In this case, we're targeting the default GitHub store on the FGA playground, and you can see that works. That's about it for the demo.
Awesome. Thank you, Ragged. Any comments or questions? Anything else you think we should have in our CLI that we haven't mentioned?
Going to be really helpful for operational work.
Awesome. Yeah, that's the goal. Hopefully it helps there.
Yeah, that's going to replace a janky little script we have that invokes, it's like we wrote it in Go, it invokes the NPM syntax transformer and kind of marshals that back into Go and uploads it. So it's going to be a big help.
Awesome. Okay, so let me now go back to, I think we can go to the next demo, which will be the Jonathan's one, like the list objects one. You ready?
Yeah. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Let's see here. Can you guys see my terminal?
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, I'll just kind of first mention, we just yesterday released this release candidate, and you can find it on our GitHub releases, and you can also pull it down through Docker. And in this release, the main change that we've added is a new experimental flag, new experimental feature we're calling optimized list objects. And what it does is it basically improves our search algorithm for list objects for models involving intersection and or exclusion. So if you have a model with and or but not in it, and you're using list objects today, there are certain scenarios where your list objects query can take an extended period of time just because of the sheer number of tuples in the system. And this optimization improves the performance for list objects in a very noticeable way for models with and but not. So I wanted to go ahead and show you that. I'm just going to use Docker to demo it. So I'll use Docker Compose, and we will bring up an OpenFGA server. And this is the latest official release of the server that we'll bring up. So this is using OpenFGA, let's see here. Yeah, OpenFGA, the release candidate, but I do not have, notice the experimental features, I do not have the optimized list objects experimental flag. So this should be using the old behavior. And over here on the right-hand side, I'll go ahead and just run an application. This application is calling list objects. And I'll show you what the model looks like here in a sec and kind of what the data looks like. But if we just run that 3 times, you can kind of see you get a P99 of 374 milliseconds, which in this case, there's quite a few objects in the system. And the search is having to search through all of those document objects in the system to find which ones the user has a particular relationship with. So I'm going to go ahead and switch gears here and Docker Compose down, and we'll enable the optimized list objects feature flag, or experimental flag, I should say. So if we come down here, if you enable the optimized list objects experimental flag, and then Docker Compose up. Again, all this new functionality is in our release candidate. So while we wait for this to come up, what I'd ask from the community, from you guys, is please pull this release candidate down, test it out with the optimized list objects. And we cannot break it. So we have not been able to find any bugs with this new experimental support. But we obviously are testing it on a subset of all the models that are out there in the community. So we'd love for your guys' help to kind of test it out. But here's that experimental feature enabled optimized list objects. We will run the same exact application over here on the right. And we see 10 milliseconds, 3 milliseconds, 3 milliseconds, 2 milliseconds. So you can see performance gains here are massive for models involving intersection and exclusion. Let me show you what our model looks like in this case. Now we kind of tailored the relationships, the relationship tuples in the model to really demonstrate just how impactful this change can be. And in this case, we have a model. We just have users and documents, and a document has a viewer relation that is defined. This is a slightly different DSL. I used my own DSL in this case, but viewer and allowed. So you have to have the viewer relationship and the allowed relationship. And then the editor is editor, but not restricted. And what we've done here is we've created a bunch of tuples in this system. In fact, let me just pull up another editor. So we've created a bunch of tuples that look like this: document one, viewer, like user John, document one, allowed, user John. And then we've created a ton of other tuples. Let's just say N, right? Document N, viewer, some other user. And the way that list objects worked before with intersection and exclusion is we would actually list all of the documents in the system, even if they weren't related to user John. So let's say we're calling list objects document. We want to know who user John has a viewer relationship with for documents, right? Before, what we would do is we would actually list all objects. So we'd list all document 1 through document N objects. And then we'd start concurrently evaluating checks on all of those, whether or not they were or were not related to user John in the first place. This new optimized list objects algorithm starts at the user John, and expands in reverse form. So if we think about this relationship graph, we start at the user and we expand in reverse form, and we find the paths through the graph that user John has direct connectivity to in some way. And so in this way, we prune our search space by a very profound amount, and we optimize our graph traversal to resolve the list objects query. And yeah, as you can see, massive performance improvements for models involving intersection and exclusion. So far, like I said, we haven't been able to break it. We would love the community's help in testing it out on your models, reporting back how it's helping your latency, and we love to collaborate.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. So I'm gonna go back to sharing my slides. Great. So now we're gonna talk about what's coming next. Okay, and these are more explorations and ideas that we want feedback to see if this solves a problem you have, and if the solutions we're thinking seems like good solutions for that problem. The problem we have here we want to solve is we have different organizations and customers that have different development teams, and each team needs to own a different part of the authorization model, right? So you can have like a company where, I don't know, the core users and relationship groups are kind of owned by the user management team that kind of builds APIs to manage that, and then you have another team who's working on document sharing, has a lot of other set of types and relationships that they want to own. And what they don't want to do is they don't want that one team writes tuples in the types that are owned by a different team. Okay, so this will be similar to in a relational database. You have different schemas, and you want a specific team to own a schema, right? And the applications for that team can write and read from that schema, but the applications from other teams cannot write in the schema, can only read or things like that. Okay, so so then you can do things like this, like the API key from team 1 can't write tuples in types defined in teams 2 modules, something like that. So to do this, we need two things. First, we need to kind of be able to define modules when creating a model. Okay, these are kind of a possible syntax of how we can do that, and in 2 different formats. The idea here is we have a base module that has a user, role, and organization, right? And then we create, let's say we are Atlassian and we're building Confluence, right? This is a new product. We have the Confluence team. They want to do their own thing, right? So we have a Confluence module that has a space, which is a construct that Confluence has, right? And documents inside that space, right? And then you define that the org of the space has a relationship with an org that is actually part of the base namespace. Right? So you define this kind of and then the owner of the document is base user. Right? So two modules, each one with their own types. This is in a single file, or this is a similar way of doing it, but you have a module per file. Okay, so in this case, you have the base module. In this case, the Confluence module includes base, right? And what you end up doing is you end up having a command in the CLI that will let you combine those models and create a new one that we are going to validate that the models make sense, and that's the model you end up saving. Okay? And then if you want different teams to have if you want like a team to only be able to manage this, another team to manage this on GitHub, you will do that through GitOps and code owners and things like that, right? So you are the one that need to make sure that only a member of the Confluence team can update the Confluence model. Right? So that part we don't do anything from the point of view who can author the model, but we let you split them in a way that we define the models. And then, which is the more interesting part, is we can define something like an FGA model where we can express who has permissions to do different operations in different namespaces. So in this case, for example, we're going to say that the application identified by this specific secret, which will be the one used by Confluence, has full access to the module in this store ID for the Confluence module. Right? So the key that this application is going to be using is going to be able to do everything, which is can query or can write in the Confluence module. And then we have we are going to have another tuple created, which we're going to say that the application identified by this secret, which will be the secret that the Confluence app is going to use, are going to have the can query permission on the base module. Okay, so with these two tuples, the Confluence team can do whatever they want in the Confluence module, but can only read or query on the base module. Stop here and see if this makes sense. And if you think this solves a problem any of you have. Should we build this?
Yes, definitely. The model composition is a problem we're definitely looking to solve, as well as kind of find. I mean, we're trying to also solve the fine-grained authorization of different pieces and parts.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
So I have a couple of questions.
Yep.
The minute I saw include, I immediately thought two-pass compilation, and like, given that we're including another model, is the intent that is there any validation that's going to end up having to happen before you can actually submit your model, right? So if you're working on that Confluence model and you're trying to submit it, it shouldn't really go in before it's actually validated. And now that you have includes, that's almost like you have to do, going back to my C++ days, you have to kind of like include, bring all those that definition, the header definition, and then run through it as a whole, right?
Yeah. So that is what that command we have in here as an example would do, which is you won't be able to save this model to FGA, the Confluence.fga directly to FGA, because if you do that, we wouldn't understand this include thing, right? Because we cannot find that file, right? So the idea today is that you're going to run a tool that is going to build a model that is going to look like this, okay, like the other syntax, sorry, like this one, where everything is together, and we're going to validate that if that makes sense, right? So it's like these two, we're going to be combined in something like this. okay, to what the one in the so the two in the right will be combined to something that we have in the left, and that will be done by a tool that will combine them in a way that makes sense, right? It will remove the includes, make sure the relationships are valid and things like that. And we also need to build some things that if you're editing this in Visual Studio Code, we can help you understanding that, yeah, this is, you click base dot and you get user, right? So we can give you a full editing experience, assuming that you can read the other models when editing them, right? So which adds complexity to the implementation of the Visual Studio Code integration or whatever tooling we bring there. But at the end of the day, this is a single model. So the server will sit as a single model. There's something else we could do in the future, which is potentially we could let you save a namespace, right? Like call the server and say, I want to save this, save a module, right? And that you're going to just send a module to the server, and we want to validate it to the server, and you're going to have permissions who can save them to the server. So instead of using GitHubs and permissions on GitHub to actually manage who can write what, right? You are going to be able to use permissions on the FGA server. But that's complexity to the implementation, and we are not sure if it's worth. So right now, the server will see a single model, and all of this is more syntactic sure, like we're going to do before saving the module. Yes, okay. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes more sense. But you also, like, what from your explanation, it feels like what would end up happening is this would be part of some kind of CI/CD pipeline. Yes. But once you start disassociating things and creating modules, is the intent that compose command also eliminates circular references?
I don't, yeah, Jonathan, was it something?
Yeah, I think, I mean, all of your concerns around this, this actually was purposefully kind of C-style include. It was kind of my idea around the include. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like you could imagine you might have across multiple different files, you could have the same module with similar types defined. And if you've included those in the same file, then obviously you have symbol resolution conflict. And that can also create circular dependencies, because module A could depend on module B could depend on module A. And yeah, so that would be on us. The complexity is on us to manage that for this FGA model compose command that we're kind of like, demonstrating here. The same could potentially, right? Circular references could also depend here on the left-hand side in a single file as well, right? Because module base can depend on module confluence can depend on module base. Now you've got yourself a circular reference. So I think the problems that you're demonstrating, Carlos, are something that we inherit by virtue of trying to bring a more modular composition to an authorization model. That's something that we're just going to have to handle, the maintainer team. But yeah, like our hope here as a first pass, at least on this, we think we can bring initial value by leveraging modular composition, but a single model. And then, because then that can move like GitOps to you and allow you to control, who can modify those files. And then there would exist a single CI/CD process somewhere in your organization that would compose those together and then save them to your OpenFGA server. So, at that point, the ball's kind of in your court for how your CI/CD works, what your infrastructure and CI/CD environment looks like. And like Andre said, in the future, we might also bring modules natively to the server API. But we think as a first pass, this helps address some of what is being asked for from the community without having to completely overhaul and change the API server side.
Yeah, it wasn't a complaint by any means. It was just like, hey, these are inherent problems that come with when you start breaking up pieces like this. And you were just giving me flashbacks to my C++ days. So, can you go back to the next slide then? Because I think you addressed all my questions here. But as far as this goes, the per module authorization, can you help me understand, like, who is the one responsible for writing these authorization rules? Is it the module owner? Is it some other party that, like that party that owns the pipeline that runs the compose? Like, what's the intent of this authorization model? Because I think that's the last part that I just see a little strange to me.
Yeah, so what's going to happen is that when you start a server, we'll have a model like this instance created somewhere, right? And we are going to load the tuples that are on the right into the server instance, right? How we're going to give us those tuples, this is more like someone in your organization will need to write these tuples. They will need to be imported when the server starts, okay? It's likely this will be more kind of, you can think about as configuration of the server from the point of view of, you're gonna say, these keys can modify these namespaces, right? So it will be something that lives in your GitHub repo that someone needs to manage with someone with the right permissions we need to manage, right? And that will be loaded as part of the server. That's the way we are thinking of. You could potentially write these tablets in runtime if you decide you want to change a permission without restarting the pod, right? You could write these tablets in runtime. But in most cases, I think the most common use case there will be more a static configuration when the server starts, right? I don't know, Jacob, how you're thinking about that you might have a similar problem there.
Yeah, we don't do anything at server start, but we did it a little bit more manually, which was fine for our use case, where we set up an authorization store and then I think inserted some kind of tuples manually to bootstrap that a little bit. But to maybe make the use case a little bit clearer, like we the authorization team, I mean, we own like the authorization model and access to it, and we have a lot of different teams that are going to be responsible for different parts of it, and we don't want the domains team to go and be, even if they manage their own authorization of their systems, we don't want them to be able to go write tuples around like the commerce namespace, or worst case, they definitely can't write tuples to this namespace that grants access to the authorization model itself. So we want to be able to segment that, and I would say the maintainers of the authorization system will probably be the ultimate arbiter of who gets to write like these specific module relations.
I have a question for you, Jacob, that I know you can kind of explore this idea a little more. So in this case, what we are not showing here, but it's something we explored internally, but we weren't sure about the need and the syntax is, in some cases you have permissions that are at the org level, for example, who can create a Confluence space, right? That will be a permission that will live in the org, right? So kind of can create Confluence space, right? That implies that from the Confluence module, I need to add a relationship to a type that is outside of the module I'm creating, right? So this will be something like a type base.org, like in defining Confluence, like adding another relationship there, right? Extending a type from another module. Right? Do you think that was something you will require when you compose models from different teams, modules from different teams?
Sorry, so could you I didn't quite follow.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, okay.
So is this still related to the, I guess, the kind of higher level like OpenFGA permissions, or kind of just around the relations of modules?
It will see, like, let's say you have module Confluence, and you want to have a permission, which is who can create a space in Confluence, right? Right. So that permission is probably going to live in the org, right? So type org, okay, and you're going to say org relation define can create Confluence space, something like this, right? User. However, how I define this in the base module, if I'm writing the Confluence module, right? So the Confluence developer should not have access to edit the base model, right? In general, what you want is that everything from the Confluence module is defined here. So you could do something like type base.org, okay, and then define can create Confluence space. Right? Or maybe you can say like extends, extends, or extends. Base or some syntax that explains at the end of the day, you're adding a relationship to a type that is defined in another namespace, right? So maybe that's something we can work later together, Jacob, and see if in the scenarios where you're thinking you have the commerce team, the domain team, and a base set of entities, if they would need to define something at the base level, right? And if they could want to do that just modifying the base one, which is possible, right? So you let them, there's a flow, like a governance flow on your side to let a team add something to the base thing, right? Or you do it in a way that is more isolated, which is something like this, right? You extend.
I see. Yeah. Yeah. So far when thinking about it, like we haven't, like, I don't think that, like, I guess our desire to split up into the modules, I think, and this is separate from the like authorization of writing tuples space. Like it's mostly just like kind of a cleanliness, like making it possible to parse type thing. Like we just have kind of one small namespace right now, and the model file is 150 lines long. So I think that I would have defaulted to, yeah, they can just go make a like PR a change to that top level model. Would be how I think we think about approaching it right now. But I can definitely see where either be scenarios where you'd value being able to that extend syntax.
Sounds good. Yeah, that resonates. Okay. So yeah, so we are out of time. So thank you very much for your time. The other problem we're going to tackle, just to keep you in the loop, is we're going to start working on the ABAC support. Okay. So Jonathan demoed that from a hackathon project that we did in the last meeting. So you can see in the recording for the last meeting and look for that. But basically, it's a way that you can add expressions to the model and reference them from relations. In this case, it's kind of, okay, I want to give permissions to a user to view a document for 5 minutes, okay? And I want to I define a condition and a tuple that lets you do that, right? So if any of you is interested in digging in this use case and have scenarios where you will find it valuable, let us know, because we are starting to work right now in spec and full spec about how this will work, and the use cases will be useful for us to build a better solution, right? Okay, so thanks everyone, and we will meet again in a month if everything goes well. And so from your side, let us know if you want to present with us in KubeCon, and if you are interested in the ABAC thing or in the modules thing, also let us know so we can talk and discuss the solutions and your problems and see how that will work. Okay. Bye-bye.